Hello and welcome to Your Average Bear Gaming. This guy's George, and today we're going to finish what we started just a few episodes ago by building and painting this guy. It was an easy build and a quick paint job, even if I try-harded just a little bit. Want to see how it worked out? I hope you do. Let's check it out. So, I was just about finished magnetizing my Tau broadside, but got a little delivery in the mail, and I want to take care of it. Since it's a holiday item, I want to put out this video as quickly as possible. So my Tau broadside, it can wait for this Red Gobbo and Bounca model. I did a unboxing in a previous video, just so that if you're curious to see what the sprue looks like, what its contents are, you have that available. But I'm going to start assembly, and it should be pretty fun. Well, there he is. Kind of a cool build. The head's separate, the torso's separate. The behind is kind of in two spots, and when you're building it, you can kind of get a better sense for how dynamic a pose this is. There's so the squig, he's kind of going one way, and the Gobbo, he's kind of leaning the other way, kind of like you would expect from inertia. It's a pretty cool little detail. I'm pretty struck. I'm shook. I am shook by the quality of the build and the kind of the level of detail and the assembly. It's a feel-good kind of a model. So I'm about ready to prime. I didn't do one thing though. So because I have I'm going to paint this real soon here. I am keeping this unglued. I'm going to paint this separately because I do want to get in the mouth. And I should point out, that tongue is its own piece. So you attach the tongue to the back of the mouth, and then you close up on it with the face of the squig. Maybe that's how all squigs are. And this is my first Orky model, so it's news to me, but it's kind of neat. The other thing I'm not attaching right now is this little chain of Christmas lights. I'm waiting for, I'm going to wait for the, to actually paint it before I add that on there. Although, here's my Gobbo. I primed him with skeleton bone from Army Painter, and then I hit a little zenithal, just a tad, with some white, flat white, also from Army Painter. That's what that looks like. The zenithal is pretty subtle, and I don't expect it to do much. I just wanted to try it again to see if this time it makes a difference. So I'm going to start painting my dude here, and I have a couple of paints out that I've mixed. Let me pull them out so you can see them. So I've got these four from Army Painter. We've got the pure red, which is going to be like a highlight color, like a accessory color, an accent color, accent color, but also is going to play a part in my blending and stuff like that, my attempts at blending. I've got this dragon red, which is going to be the primary color for this squig, for Mr. Bounca. This is going to be his main color. I'm going to try to blend it in with some of this, maybe some orange, maybe some other stuff. Just depends on how I feel and how successful I'm being. For the inside of the mouth, I picked a monster brown, and this is not going to be the actual color, but this is going to be my base color. And I'm going to go in there, do some highlights with this purple, see if it works, and then maybe some even brighter highlights of pink on them. I'm going to try some stuff I've never tried before, just because this is such a cool little model that I want to try hard a little bit. And if I fail, well, yuck. But I'm going to do my best. I did some custom mixing, so a couple of drops of this, a drop of this, a little bit of water, and I've got a nice thin paint that hopefully won't separate on me, which is a problem I have a bit of on occasion. And so when I initially thought about this video, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start it off by painting this nose, this Rudolph-esque nose, and then the admittedly unfunny joke was going to be, ta-da! That's it. He's fully painted. I'm done. Obviously, that's not the way that's going to work, but... and I also realized it wasn't all that funny, so back to the drawing board and all that jazz. I think I'll start with the main body. It's underneath all this. So I'm going to start with my dragon red and start laying down this base color. It's a little more challenging than usual because I have glued this entire model together. And I'm hoping that's not going to backfire on me. But I've seen plenty of other people paint like this, so there's got to be a benefit to it, right? So I'm laying down this layer of brown on the inside of the Bounce's mouth to kind of get me the base of the gums, and it became obvious why I thought it was a good idea to paint the face separately. So my original thought was like, hey, if I paint the face separately, it's going to make it easy to lay down the colors inside the mouth, which is still true, but more challenging even than that is the inside of the face. There's all that stuff kind of behind the teeth that I'd have to get to, and so doing it this way, I'm able to kind of paint it from the inside this way. So if you're not entirely sold on keeping this model unassembled, unglued, then this should probably sell you on it. I would not I would not assemble this fully until you've taken care of this bit, because it's going to be real challenging to get to if you assemble it. On the Gobbo's cloak, I'm going to go with pure red. I'm a little nervous about it since it's the same red I'm using for the for some of the accent colors, like the Bounce's Rudolphy nose. But I think, I'm going to lean into the theme here of the Christmas colors. So it's going to be a thing here. There's going to be a couple of spots here where you might be better off not assembling them. So, for example, this pocket with a gun and the pocket with a grenade, that may not be a bad thing to glue after you've painted or at least based it, because they're in 3 dimensions, and so there's stuff behind it that you need to get to that's hard to get to. And so the same thing with his head. If you glue it on, there's stuff happening behind the beard that is a little challenging to get to. I mean, you can still get to it, so it's not like you need to do this, but it's something you might want to consider if you want like the best results. Yeah. I have also discovered that I messed up a little bit. You'll notice my Gobbo, his foot is literally reversed. I need to somehow fix that. I'm not sure if I'll be able to without damaging the model. I'm gonna give it a shot, and if I can't fix it, well, that's just it's Gobbo magic. He does that. It's the thing he does. The basing is coming along quite nicely. I have a pretty decent color selection. I'm using quite a few different colors on this project, mostly because I want to distinguish between various shades of the same color. Like you'll see here the antlers, they're this dark brown. The mouth is this light brown. So they're going to end up looking very different, I hope, in the end project. But I'm still having some issues distinguishing some of the same colors. So, for example, there's that little there's a wrap, like a leather strap, holding the antler together. It apparently broke at some point, and Gobbo kind of lashed it up. And so it's going to be a challenge to visually distinguish that brown from the antler brown. I have an idea of how I'm going to do that, but that's going to be in the later, kind of middle stages of this project. But I just kind of wanted to point out that there's going to be some decisions on color that you're going to have to grapple with here. Also, you'll notice the head is kind of a pale red. I might want to go over that with another coat of the red base. I do want some of the base showing up, but I don't want maybe that much of the base coat showing up. I do want it to be clearly red. And so the reason for that distinction is a little more clear here, where you'll see how the Gobbo is wearing red and he's writing red. And so I'm going to need to focus on distinguishing the two reds from each other. And so I think darkening up the base coat on both of those is going to be important. It's kind of a tricky balance, right? Because you want them to be different, but you also want some of the undercoat to show up. So if you darken it up with another pass of the base coat glaze, then you lose a lot more of the underlying base coat, of the undercoat. So there's some of those kind of issues to deal with. There's another similar issue here with the beard and the fur of his hat. So the beard is going to be white, and the fur is also going to be white, but there should be different kinds of white, and that's going to be a bit more of a challenge. I think I have an idea on how to overcome this, and I'm going to try it out with the base, because the base is also going to be white, right? There's going to be snow. So what I've done is I've added a very, very, very light glaze. It's almost a wash, actually, at that point, of the light brown that I used for the mouth. And I'm hoping that once that dries, it's kind of rest on the crevices. And so when I go back in with my pure white, my flat white, some of the undercoat is going to show up, and it's going to look like snow over dirt. And here it'll contrast, so that white's going to contrast with the white of the beard and the coat. So I'm going to have to rely on my washes and some additional glazing on top of the base coat to distinguish the different shades of white here. Same thing with the shades of red and the shades of brown that I'm using all over this model. But so far I'm having a lot of fun with it, and my paints are working really well. I'm not struggling with them at all, and I think in large part it's because I'm using this stuff to thin down my paints as opposed to water. I usually just use water, but this stuff is serving me a bit better. It thins out my paint very nicely, but it still leaves a very nice coat behind. I wish I had tried that sooner. I would have saved a lot of headaches. You'll also notice I fixed the leg. Now it's facing the right direction. I've undercoated most of that in black. There's the belt as well. The boots are going to stay black, but the soles I'm going to make them metal. And another thing that I've undercoated in black is the headband on which the antlers are attached on Bounca. I've undercoated that black. That's going to be a metallic silver-ish color. It's a little gruesome bolting something onto a squig's head, but you know, it is the Orky way, so who am I to judge? So I think I've finally finished applying all the base colors onto this model. The reds did require a second coat, and I think they're much nicer, more vibrant as a result. And you'll notice that I went ahead and, so I had the blue spheres, and here I had the red nose. I went over it with black because I had another idea that I want to try, and that's I want to make these metallic with a hint of color so that you can tell the difference from the other colors. There's something special about them. I don't know how well that's going to work, but I'm going to give it a shot. And so I started off with the black undercoat. It looks pretty neat already, and for the most part, if this was a normal painting video, I would just add some washes and slap in a few more details like those eyeballs or whatever, and it'd be done. But I'm going to try hard in this video, so I'm only about halfway done. Here's a look at the actual Gobbo with most of Bounca. You'll see the base is now more white. It's got a little bit of something happening on the ground here to indicate snow, but it's snow on a surface. So the surface is kind of peeking through, so it's not like fluffy snow. If I wanted fluffy snow, I'd probably want to apply some kind of texture paint, and I'm not quite sure about that. So like I said, the reds, I've redone them. I've given them a second coat, both on the squig and on the coat of my Gobbo here. I've also retouched his face. The green was a little light, a little transparent, so I went over it and gave it some more green. I did the metals. I did the gun. I went with an undercoat, and so all the stuff that's going to be metallic, you'll see it's undercoated. And with the dynamite stick, I went with white because I'm going to try candy cane stripes. That should be interesting. The last thing I need to do is work on this smoke. I've never actually painted smoke before, and so over the white coat, I went in and I gave it I took some already thin white and I just kind of dabbed it in certain places, and then I went over it with a really wet brush and wiped away a lot of it, but I left behind quite a bit of that smokiness. And so before I actually finish with the basing, I want to apply some white to that smoke in the way it's going to end up. And so the smoke will be kind of different shades of white and black, but I want it to be a smoky smoke, not a oily black smoke or a pure white smoke. So you kind of have to do this in several stages to get this random kind of pattern to make it look a little smoky. And so I've done that. Once that dries, I'm going to do some other stuff to it, but I wanted to make sure that the fundamental color was mostly white, with some patches of black peeking through, and then I'll pick out other colors from there. Also, I just realized that inside this mouth on the tongue is an actual twig and a bauble there, one of those spheres. So I'm going to pick out that twig with the brown color. And I'm going to start adding some purple details inside the mouth, kind of those raised areas. We'll do the same on the gums here. I want a nice transition between the brown and the purple. On the Gobbo himself, I'm going to try to add a few highlights kind of on these areas that are facing up. Just a slightly redder, less dark version of red, and I'm just going to apply it to some of these raised areas. It's going to be a subtle thing. It's kind of hard to tell, so I'll probably have to kick it up a bit more than that. So there are some highlights on there. I'm going to do the same with the pure red. So for that pure red, I just mixed a little bit of the mummy robes. It's kind of an off-white to the pure red for this weird, looks like this gives me a pink vibe. I'm just brushing it on a little bit on some of these raised surfaces that are looking like there'll be highlights. For our little Gobbo boy, it's going to get some green highlights. I just took some of his green, I mixed it in with a bit of that off-white, and I'm going to hit those raised areas. And there's not going to be a lot of difference here because it looks like the glazing did its job. So I'm actually kind of almost muting the glazing. And now I'm going to try to distinguish between the white of the beard and the white of the fur. And to do that, I mixed up some of the flesh wash, just a very little bit, and I mixed it in with some water and a little bit of the flow improver. And what this is going to do, it's going to give me just a hint of brown. It's just the tiniest bit of brown, so that it still looks mostly white. So you can kind of see that back part right there. It's got some of that tone, so it looks like animal skin, fur brown, and maybe just a little bit of dingy, because our Gobbo is he's been out in the field raising a ruckus, so he's not the cleanest boy right now. For the beard, that white, I'm going to go with a little bit of black, and I'm just going to touch it kind of like that. I'm going to get my brush really wet. Okay, maybe not that wet. And gotta be careful here because you can lose control of where the paint's going. But it's just a hint of black on that fur. Oh, I'm sorry, on that beard. So it looks, like a gray beard versus the animal brown fur. That should be a decent, not contrast so much as just a subtle difference. Well, my blending went okay. It's very subtle, and I think it's probably because it's over a glaze, and so it's hard to tell. But like on the Gobbo, you can kind of see where I did a little bit of some highlights. I didn't do any shadows. I'm going to let the wash do that for me. I think that's the plan. But before I do that, I want to figure out this metallic color on the spheres. And I think the way I'm going to approach this is, so I've got that color, and I'm going to go with just a little dab of my target paint, and then I'm going to get the brush really wet and kind of dilute it a bit. See if this is the trick. Does this do it? No, it actually wipes away the metallic paint. Okay, that's not what I was hoping for. Alright, I'm going to give my Gobbo a bit of a wash with green tones to kind of help deepen the color a bit, but also give me some shadows to contrast with what few highlights are actually on there. Yeah, Gobbo's hand looks nice and contrasty, so I'm going to do the same thing with the Choppa's, the red. So I'm going to go in here with some wash. It's going to deepen the red, but also provide some shadows. And it'll also kind of help me to blend a little bit more of those few highlights I've got. The two different colors of red. The transition will be kind of hidden a little bit by the wash. At least that's kind of how I've felt it work. So this is what it looks like when I try hard. Honestly, it's not that much different from when I don't try hard, which is a little disappointing. But you know what? There's value in the exercise. I added a little snowman tipped over that our buddy here kicked. So he's sad, laid over. I'm going to paint him up a little bit, give him some buttons, give him an orange nose. I did my best. That's epoxy putty, the Tamiya stuff. I just made a little snowman that looked like it's toppled over. It's not great, but you know, it's a thing. One of the things I'm going to change before I give this a varnish is I'm really unhappy with the colors of those little spheres. So I give them a metallic color, and then I went over them with a wash, and it's just not. It isn't the look that I was going for. It really isn't. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to give them actual color and see if I can kind of sort of metallize them with a dry brush, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to go over those with their actual colors because this thing deserves to be colorful. So this dude is basically done. I've went ahead and given him a really nice thin coat of flat varnish, and it's about as finished as it's going to get. The only last thing I want to do is to try to bring some extra life out of those spheres, those little ornaments, and so I'm going to go over them with a little bit of gloss varnish to set them out as special somehow. I could do like that reflective effect, but it requires a bit of blending and some skill that I'm just not comfortable employing at the moment. So I'm going to do this proxy thing where it looks like these things are a little bit more reflective than the rest of the stuff. And there is an ornament inside Bounca's mouth. It's going to stay unvarnished or unglossed because there's no way I'm getting in there. And you know what? I'll do the same thing for a shiny little star. Alright, let this dry and then we'll talk some constructive criticism, experiences, etc., etc. So here we are. The Red Gobbo with his trusty steed, the Choppa. No, the Bounca. Yeah, it was overall a pretty nice experience. It was uncomplicated to build for the most part. There's a couple of pieces that might surprise you a bit. Like that tongue inside the mouth. That's a neat little detail. The pockets with the, stocking stuffers in them. There's a nice amount of detail to this model, and it was nice to build. Everything fit together well. No excessive flashing and mold lines. Just the normal amount for your more modern Games Workshop releases. There's a lot of character to this model. I really like the concept. It's just a neat experience. In terms of my paint job, it's fine. As I said, when I introduced this model, as I was gonna, I try-harded a little bit. I did more effort. I spent more time with this model than I normally do. I figured, you know what? It's one of those commemorative editions or releases, and it's just one of them. Let's do a really good job. Let's try some blending. And I will say my efforts at blending didn't turn out the way they usually do, which is they turned out okay. It didn't turn out poorly, which is what I usually get. I was successful, I think, in doing a little bit of blending, and it doesn't stick out. It doesn't look like it's botched. It's fine, but it's just fine. Like, it isn't great. I don't have that creamy blend, and that's to be expected. I am not great at this. I've tried it a couple of times with less than zero success. Like, it was worse. Usually when I try blending, my efforts are worse than they are when I don't try to blend. This time at least, it's at least as good as my usual speed painting technique. I don't see that I added a ton of value, a ton of visual interest for my extra efforts, but maybe it's just that I'm not good enough to do that yet. Yeah, but it was a fun model. It's the first Orky model I have. Lots of character. I really enjoyed it. It does give me hope that I can continue to improve my painting skills and use some more advanced techniques. But for the most part, I probably will continue to speed paint wherever possible. You know what? There's one detail that I've missed that I want to add, and it would make this model 110% complete. You know the drill, guys. Beware of the yellow snow. Now that the model is properly orcified, thank you so very much for watching, putting up with my shenanigans. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Be nice to yourselves and each other. Peace.